So let's talk about COVID and how it impacts economy. It's like impacting everyone. And since you're an expert in the business and women, so tell me how COVID impact women in general and for past few months.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's very interesting. In the English language, Zheela, we actually have a terminology. It's called she-cession instead of recession, because the experts believe that this particular pandemic is going to impact women much more than ever before. So normally pandemics impact women in any case, or inequality widens with any pandemic in the world. But this one is particularly going to affect women, because COVID has affected specifically those women working in sectors that are women dominated. So you have the health sector, where women make up globally 74%, the education sector, where women work 61%, and accommodation and food, so tourism, hotels, etc., 54%. So women are likely to not have a job in these sectors because they're being let go, because those economies are not likely to return, but also it's going to take them longer to return into the economy. So that is one of those things. And we also know that specifically because of COVID, with children at home, the whole care responsibilities have increased, and so women ended up before the COVID crisis 3 times doing more care work than men, and now of course that's going to further increase. Gender violence and gender-based violence, domestic violence went up, so at least 20% increase after COVID. And then we have liquidity constraints that are affecting women entrepreneurs in particular. And there was a finance gap in any case beforehand, so it's going to even go more.
COVID impacted healthcare. You're right. In Afghanistan, it impacted healthcare because we have a lot of women in healthcare. But the numbers are very underreported or low, both like patient-wise, also how many healthcare workers are impacted as well. So this is another thing, like as you said, COVID impact Afghan women, especially health workers.
Yeah, of course, and women being at the front line, right? The only thing that gives me some reassurances in terms of women as care workers, I think they are so aware of the risk, including the employers or the hospitals, that actually often the health workers are very well protected, or they're better protected than, on the street or at home or in larger gatherings. So in New York, they actually found out that health workers' incidence rate of contracting the virus was lower than the general population. So I'm hoping that care workers in Afghanistan also continue to take good care of themselves and that they're being protected.
Yeah, and also here with the small businesses, there's some kind of loans available through the bank for small business support. There are some kind of potential support for business. But in Afghanistan, like women, they are impacted so much, and they stand by themselves, and I don't know, they're not being helped. They don't have kind of like these solutions for them.
Yeah, I think last time when we spoke, we had the same piece, right? The COVID pandemic is putting a magnifying glass on the inequalities already, but it's at the same time also presents an opportunity for really all actors to get together and see, this is really something that will help everyone. So one of the things that we know is that if you're digitally connected, if you have access to the internet, if you have your own phone, then you're actually much more likely to get out of the crisis faster than not. But unfortunately, we know that before the crisis, globally, again, 70% women had 17% less access to the internet, and they were 20% less likely to own a phone, a mobile phone, a smartphone. And so that continues to be a solution. And so there's a lot of things going on in the digital space as well. When you look specifically at the financial situation, and you spoke about loans that just now, Zheela, the situation in Afghanistan is a little bit more complicated because there's not that many people that are actually included in the financial services product space, right? So only 15% of the adult population had an account in 2017, according to Findex, which is a global statistic. And among those accounts, there was a lot of inactivity even. So those were accounts that were not necessarily used. And then within that, 70% of the women, there's a gender gap of 70%. So women are much less likely, let me put it this way, much less likely to have an institutional account than men. And then you put on top of that the whole mobile gap, which is also 60%, the gender gap again between women and men. So I think with everything that is going on, the higher responsibility for women on children, the well-being of the family, the well-being of the businesses that they used to run, especially when they're running hair salons and restaurant-related shops. It's very complicated for women to actually, women-owned businesses to actually continue running those shops financially lucratively. And so there's a lot of space for financial institutions to actually target women specifically. And there's a lot of innovation happening in that sector.
I spoke to someone from Afghanistan, and she's running a business for almost 6,000 women, and most of them work from home. And they really wanted also to be supported. So there's a little of good news as well, because some of these women are working from home anyways. So what is your thoughts about that how they can be reached out, and if there is, like you say, an institution targeting women and helping them, how they can be targeted and help them?
We know that financial institutions are actually using this opportunity to reach out to women digitally. So even if it's just one family member who has a phone, still, you know, a lot of women family members and friends, the units can be brought around that to continue to promote knowledge about the pandemic, but also financial and marketing advice and financial marketing and digital advice. And so that has been very, very successful. Even in some cases, banks are offering support as it relates to mental support. So actually providing health services through the phone to their customers, because they know the pandemic is going to pass and those customers are going to stay around. So every help that anybody can give will be probably much, much, much valued also for future customers and clients, and to retain that clientship. And then the other piece is just mental health, because women are suffering a lot, particularly also when we talk from a business perspective. The supply chains have been under a lot of constraints. And in Afghanistan, we know that some of the inputs for products, the cost of production has increased. Food prices have gone up. I believe I read something that wheat flour prices and cooking oil prices went up 23%. Well, that's a key ingredient for food, not just for restaurants and food services, but for just putting daily food on the table, right? Rice and sugar prices went up 7 to 12%. So that is a huge issue. And the other way that in other countries, women's groups have made a lot of impact is actually that the whole idea of group lending has helped again. Figuring out, you know, how can we support each other in these particular situations? Because for a lot of financial institutions, it's still difficult to possibly lend if they don't have the regulatory part in place.
Yeah. So listening to you, you're suggesting that women during COVID paying the price, and post-COVID they're going to pay the price.
It's a she session. I don't know what the equivalent word would be in Dari, but it definitely is expected that women will pay a higher price. But again, here lies the opportunity, because the magnifying glass just shows this inequality has to be dealt with, because without taking care of the women and the families, the entire businesses and economies are going to suffer. And I think even you were speaking before about some legal issues. Actually, on the entrepreneurship indicators that the World Bank collects, Afghanistan is not doing so poorly. They actually reached 75% of the 100% points that can be reached in that particular indicator out of 7. But there's other indicators that make it so much more difficult, right, to conduct business as it relates to marriage, access to assets, where there's, you know, inheritance rights concerned. Then you have the whole thing about mobility issues and legal rights. And so there's other indicators that I think in the medium term, institutions should have another look at and maybe see what they can do in order to improve those, because they're important for the economy. Discrimination is always bad for business.
So last question, you know that women are part of Afghan society and part of the economy. And what's your thoughts of Afghan future, let's say, peace process and talks? Because Taliban limited women from access to education or having this opportunity that they have right now, like running a business. What's your thoughts, like how it will give them pace, or they will survive within this peace talks and be again part of the economy as they are and keep their achievements?
the pessimists are saying that globally, you know, a lot of the progress being made on the feminist, women's rights, human rights front, women are going to suffer. But the optimists, to which I include myself, are looking at it again as a huge opportunity. And I think it will also be up to the international community to make sure that women have the seat at the table that they have asked for on 1325 under the UN resolution, and make good on that particular part on women's participation in the peace talks. Just because it's better outcomes. We have seen that women's leadership globally has, particularly in this pandemic, provided enormous insight. Some of the countries led by women leaders, and there are 7 that always get quoted in terms of 7 heads of states. Those countries have just been able to tackle the crisis better because it is about having the insights into health issues, economy issues, family issues, etc. And so I believe that there is something to be gained for everybody in the society if women contribute to the peace process. And I hope that the international community will make sure that that happens.
Great. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you. And recently, Deborah Lyons, she had an event with Yonama. It's not a question, just she commented also similar like you. Women meaningful engagement will help Afghanistan in whole. And that's exactly what you're saying as well. Yeah.
I believe there's something to be said to that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you. Let me stop.